class, which is I'm trying to do a problem-based unit. I don't know how effectively I'm rolling that out, but that's kind of the big experimental thing that I'm doing, like personally, professionally. But anyway, it's based on sustainability. So I'm hoping they're going to make something like some prototype that will be a solution to a problem that they identify. So we just started off just kind of talking about the big global issues that they're aware of already. And I kind of showed some provocative like clips that would try to like interest them or kind of affect them emotionally. And that led to some deeper conversations. And then like one kid, he was just having an off week. And I know this because, you know, we as teachers like meet and everything. And we kind of get the down low on what's happening. He's a really smart kid. And I can't remember what the context was now, but he came out and said, well, life really has no meaning. This is all pointless. And maybe he's right philosophically, but we might be, I don't know. But but the conversation just took a dark turn immediately, or seemingly dark turn, right? And so that just kind of put me in the situation as a teacher, especially with my style. I'm very much a conversation-based teacher. It's an open dialogue that just takes place constantly, you know. And I try to stay out of it if it's going well between the students. But anyway, he was speaking to me, but to the whole class at the same time. I didn't really know how to respond to that. My knee-jerk reaction was that I felt some like adult responsibility to try to convince the kids that there is a reason, that it's not pointless. And I mean, I personally believe that, but I'm also, I mean, it's hard to argue in either direction. I mean, you could easily argue that there is no purpose to all this, right? And this is an 8th grade classroom. Yeah, they just kind of brought that issue up in my mind, like, well, why don't we talk about these things in school? Like, I guess because we're so, especially from the U.S., you know, we're so afraid of like stepping into some zone of religion that we just run away from these questions, which really are the most important questions that you could probably ever ask in your entire life, you know?
Right. Yeah.
What do you think about
that? I was kind of, as you were talking, I was wondering, but like, what is our role in that? And like, because I don't necessarily think it's to provide the answers. You know, I don't
either.
Like the more and more I think and read about stuff, it's like that our job is just to kind of, and that's kind of what that seminar I'm kind of taking on the kind of coaching. It's like, it's our role is to mediate their thinking, you know, and kind of give them the tools to process information. And I don't know why you wouldn't want to talk about that stuff. Because that's the kind of joke I tell people is when I taught in public school, and someone would bring up religion, I would say, you should probably talk to your parents about that. And then when I taught at a religious school and they brought up science, I'd go, you probably should talk about this to your parents.
Yeah, we stay out of that, don't we? Like,
right, exactly.
And I have to say, like, the context too is I'm a social studies teacher. I don't know, like, and technically, like, within this curriculum that we teach, the IB, NYP, like, I'm an individuals and societies teacher, which is like an amalgamation of humanities and social sciences together, you know. So if anywhere, that's a place where you have to talk about it, because I mean, it can include religion as well, you know.
Yeah. I don't know why we are so like I don't know if I don't even think we're protecting anyone. I don't know. I mean, we're just protecting ourselves, or is it a fear of litigious reaction by parents or something like that? I don't really know.
I think that for me,
kind of stop.
That's part of it. But I mean, I think if we're just talking in general, I would say, and you can correct me on this, we're just totally talking opinion here, but I would say the average person tries to avoid that at all costs in their own mental dialogue. I don't know that to be true, but that's my assessment of humanity, is that, or if people are particularly religious and they just kind of assume their religion as tradition, as to say, like, in other words, I didn't consciously become a Buddhist or a Christian. My dad was, or my mom, you know, and I just did it. That might just give them their answers in a very, even though those religions can provide, you know, deep understanding, if you just accept it in a superficial way, they might just, that might be their comfort blanket. So I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, being that teachers are just people, I would say most teachers probably stay away from questions like that in their own mind. I don't know that that's true, though. I mean, that just is something that came to mind.
Well, I do know that humans really don't like to think. It's a fairly new skill in our development, developmentally speaking, when it comes to, how long we've existed in our prefrontal cortex and all that stuff. And so I think we like patterns. We like things to be, we like to already know the answer, like it's an energy thing. And we don't, if we're not purposeful about it and we don't push ourselves to do it, then a lot of times we'd rather just not think. And I think that's where like the danger of, technology or whatever, like not even technology, anything that just keeps you complacent, and like we're easy to keep complacent, I guess. Like, cause that's kind of our default switch is like, we'd rather not think about stuff as an entirety. So I would say your assumption would be accurate. Again, I don't know, cause that's all very internal processing that people don't really talk about for whatever reason. I mean, that's usually that's the only stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I want to second something that you said earlier, which is that, I certainly don't think it's our job to give those answers. But I also don't think it's my job to leave a kid totally hopeless, because I think that's what had kind of got through to that kid. Because we weren't having that conversation per se. What we were actually talking about is, where are we going as a species? Like, we're facing some massive. I mean, if you choose to accept like the kind of I guess the social dialogue, or I don't fact check all this stuff, but right, you keep hearing that 97% of climate scientists agree that we're facing some major problems that are human caused. So that was the context. Yeah, I mean, that was the context of the conversation. So I mean, I guess indirectly that is an existential question, because the question is, are we going to go extinct because of our own refusal to adapt, or are we gonna do something, right? And so that was kind of what led him into, well, this is all pointless anyway. What are we doing? Because it's tricky, isn't it? Because these kids, and I saw a very similar thing there at my last school, but they aren't aware, and I don't know if anyone is. When I was in Europe, I think the kids were more aware, but I was going to say that they're not really aware of like just simple things that are not going to save the planet per se, but just recycling. Like, if you check the recycling at your school, you probably will find that most people are just throwing it wherever they want to put it.
Of course,
what I'm saying? And it's something so simple. So I was trying to get that across to them too. So I was trying to, as they say, emotion drives attention and attention drives learning, right? So you have to have, and your brain kind of filters information depending on what it determines to be most important to it, right? And so number one is existence, isn't it? How do you say that? Like how do you call it, where you keep yourself going? That's like your first priority. Like anyway, I can't think of the term. Yeah, but I was just trying to tap into, hey, this is important. Like, you need to wake up and let's do something about this. But it's a fine line to walk between doing that and then showing these problems and showing how grand they are, and then being like, well, there's nothing we can do about this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder then if it's like, because I guess we do have to be very thoughtful in how we're kind of presenting that material, because like I struggle with what is, when it comes, I think with 8th grade, I mean, they're developmentally appropriate. They're at a stage where they can theorize and kind of understand abstract ideas. And so, like, I think one of your questions at the beginning was like, at what age did you start doing that? And I wonder, like, if you look at like Piaget's work at all, he talks about how, like, until they reach adolescence, kids can't like theorize and they can't abstract. Like, it's just a very difficult thing for them to do. And so, like, I almost see like the job of elementary school should be to give them all of the foundational kind of mental models that they need in order to then be functioning and be able to theorize and come up with use those mental models and use those lattices or that framework to tackle all the difficult questions that kind of come their way. But I don't know where I was going.
I gave the kids this year, when I left the Columbus school, I was thinking just, every time you start over, you take what you learned and you try to make it better,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of fine tune what you're doing. Like, I was very idealistic when I was young. I mean, I'm still idealistic I think, like compared to the average adult, I'm probably too idealistic really. But when I started teaching, like I was really, how would I say that? I had this sense that I probably would not be a teacher more than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And why is because I thought that I would say things that would get me in trouble. And I thought that I would talk about topics or issues that people want to be left alone. Not again. I guess what I'm trying to say is I felt like I was convicted. I know that's a very religious term, but I felt like I was convicted to try to speak truth as best as I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
Not to proclaim that I know truth, but to speak as honestly for what I do understand as I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying all that because, last time we kind of talked very briefly about our philosophy of education.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's so important because it keeps clear in my mind, what am I doing? Like my philosophy of education is not for kids to learn everything about psychology or history or geography or to even save the world, to be honest with you. That's not my philosophy of education. If I had to boil it down, it's basically empowerment, self-empowerment.
Okay.
And I build that on, as I mentioned last time, this idea that I want to empower kids and give them the tools, kind of like what you were saying, like on a different level with younger kids, but to move them in the direction of self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, I started the year off and, you always give these get to know you forms, don't you? Like, and when you start teaching, you just kind of ape or mimic what came before you. And I think that's good. And in many ways, like I used to give like, what's your favorite sport and what color do you like and things like that. Right.
Yeah.
So here's the questions I gave this year. I can't remember all of them because I forgot all about this until we were having this conversation. But on the form, I said, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, what would you do differently today?
Mm.
And I gave a couple more questions like that because that's really what I'm cutting into. I'm trying to like shake people up a little bit and be like, because we avoid we as humans, I'm saying, we avoid at all costs this impending reality that we're going to die.
Right. Yeah.
You are going to die eventually. Like, I mean, I used to have this analogy in my mind, like, I don't know why I chose this pirate analogy, but like walk the plank.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta walk. We all gotta walk the plank.
Right. Yeah.
You make this hypothetical idea in your mind, like, well, I hope I never have to, like have a gun put to my head or something like that. But if you metacognitively peel back the layers of that onion, what you're really saying is, I'm afraid to die, and I don't want to go through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we avoid that constantly as humans. I'm saying, and I don't know, like. I don't know what I'm getting at here, but I try to think about death daily. Like I don't find it, not morbidly, but just to put myself in check. Like, dude, you're going to die. Is this what you want to be doing right now? Like, are you using your time wisely? Are you trying to fulfill your, what you consider your purpose to be? If you're one of those people who think that you have some purpose, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? So I do think it's important to challenge kids on that level. But again, I personally, because I started off in the public school system, as you and I talked about, like I try not to go into a religious route with it because that's not my goal. I'm not trying to make kids religious per se. I'm trying to make them conscious, let's say it that way.
Yeah. And to almost live with purpose, because I don't know how many, I wonder, as you were talking, I was wondering just how many people have a purpose, that they are aware of and that they strive to do and strive to be, because I would be very curious. Maybe that will be my leading question when I meet people. What's your purpose? And then they can just walk away from me and not talk to me again. And that's fine.
I went through that little, I remember I would meet people in college and I would say, what's your philosophy on life? And I was kind of doing it you know, in a joking way, because it's such a heavy question to ask somebody in the beginning. But I was always interested to see what they would say, and most people wouldn't be able to respond to that. And like, I don't know how I would respond right now to that question, to be honest with you. I think I could spit something out, but I don't have a conscious understanding of what my philosophy on life is per se.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what that Jordan Peterson, when he was talking about that self-authoring stuff. Do you remember that part when
I rewatched that whole podcast, by the way?
Yeah. No, Oh, you watched it twice, or?
Well, no, I watched the entire. In other words, I had seen pieces of it.
Oh, okay.
Which actually was a very specific part of that conversation where they were talking about the gender pronouns. But that whole conversation was incredible. Like, they went.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That I've had that happen to me the last couple months, and then I read a book. I read this book called Dark Matter, and it's a good, well written. It's a story about a scientist. It's fiction, but the base of it is like quantum mechanics and how there are an infinite amount of parallel universes, kind of thing. And so those two things have really kind of got the old gears kind of and cogs twisted in my head. And so, like, just theorizing about but let me get back to the self-offering thing. Let's not go down that thing. I think that's kind of what he is talking about. It's like we kind of you go through that writing process and kind of map yourself out so that you can understand, you know, who you are and what drives you and what you could do, maybe shore up some weaknesses, make some strengths stronger, so that you can visualize and get done what you want to get done with life and kind of figure that stuff out. So I think there's a good power in writing that I think most people, I know we're making very broad guesses here today, but I think most people don't really take the time to. I don't. You know, I kind of signed up for that self-authoring thing because I'd like to go through that process. I just haven't found the time yet. I shouldn't say I haven't found the time. I haven't chosen to do it in the time that I'm given at this point, but I'm going to at some point.
Mm-hmm. I started. It was so enlightening to see that, because, you know, in our last conversation, you told me, you know, you were like, I got to start writing more, and I didn't understand the context of what you were saying until I watched that podcast again, and I found it fascinating because I stumbled onto that not knowing the benefits of it. Like, I started writing probably when I was 20. Well, I'll say this. You know, it's funny how these seeds end up in your consciousness in life. You know, but I remember as a younger person, like, say young, like 17, 18, and I don't even know why now, but I think I saw a thing on the History Channel, and I thought that Da Vinci, and at least at that point in my life, I was like, he's the most fascinating dude ever. Like, he seemed like such a well-rounded, super intelligent guy, you know. And I remember, this is going to be a super like meta type conversation. And but I guess because I got 1,000 things firing as I'm saying that. As I'm telling you this story, I'm like, oh, this is how I ended up at self-actualization, because I was wondering. But anyway, with that being said, one of the things that I remember from this thing on the History Channel when I was a kid, when I was totally unconscious, was that Da Vinci always kept a notebook with him. And I don't know, like, something intuitively within me, and that's why I was thinking about self-actualization, clung to that. You create your own models. You create your own role models. And they change as you get older, right? When you're a kid, your role models are like adults, like your teachers and things like that. And then you get to like middle school, and it's your peers more or less. And then as you get older, it tends to be like people that embody what you admire, right? So that planted some seed in me. And so at like 20 or 21, I started to write like almost nothing. Like my girlfriend at the time bought me like a notebook. It was kind of like a journal type notebook. And it took me like, let's see, from like 20 or 21 till I graduated college, and I graduated college late, so to 24, and I had not filled that notebook up. So I just wrote very, very few times, right? And then from that age, from 24, which is when it really started, from when I graduated college to when I left South Carolina, which was 2 years later, I had written 6 of those notebooks, and I was just almost manic, you know, just writing constantly. And I was, you know, I hate to make these things religious, but I'm from the South and I have to dramatize everything. You know what I'm saying? So this is like a very religious experience in a way, but I had just moved to Charleston, South Carolina. And when I graduated college, I was like, man, I don't want to be a teacher. So I was waiting tables. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I did in college. But you can actually, in a tourist town like Charleston, you can make a living doing that. You can make $40,000 or so a year waiting tables, you know. Sure. But I remember just feeling, and piled on top of this, I had this extreme pressure of student loans, which I hear on the side note is like supposed to be like going to be like the next big bubble, like a crisis or something. But I was just, this was after the recession in 2007 or 8, and so. Like there was very little leniency in paying back your loan. So here I am waiting tables. I don't want to be a teacher. I've got like loan people calling me, threatening me constantly. And I just had all this on me. And I literally woke up. I'm like, this is what I was telling you. Like I wrote a few things just trying to go through the motions of being the type of person I wanted to be. You know what I'm saying? But I couldn't sleep, man. And I was in this little, I'd been in Charleston for maybe 2 weeks, and I literally just kind of snapped awake. I was kind of half asleep, half awake, tossing and turning. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning, and I got up, and I don't even know where it came from, but I just started writing a story. And I couldn't stop until I finished this story in my head. I don't know why. And it was a very meta story. It was almost like about a guy sitting in his bed writing in his notebook. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. And I just never stopped. But I didn't understand why I was doing that. I just did it. I just trusted this intuitive thing to do it. And I've been doing that for years now. And I think and so when I saw Jordan Peterson talking about that, I was like, man, I don't know. I'm lucky that because I've learned, so much about myself. You put it on paper and then you're like, wow, I didn't know all this stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That just, it's probably been maybe the most important thing in my life, I would say.
Yeah. I would think so. It would be up there for sure.
And everywhere I live now, I have to consider it. I don't have to, but I choose to. Everywhere I live now, I'm like, if this were a novel, and that was the meta thing, right? Like, and I guess kind of to bring this to where I started with this kid, talking about this kid in class, everywhere I go, I imagine if this were a novel, how would I want it to go? And what I mean by that is not trying to dominate my life in the sense of I want to control everything, but why don't I make this life interesting? Would this life be more interesting if I sit at home tonight and watch TV, or I went out and see what happens? If I have this conversation with this person whatever, how many times does your intuition speak to you on a daily basis to tell you, hey, I should pick that up, or I should do this thing, or I should do that, and you just brush it aside to stay in your routine,
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a symptom of not realizing you are alive in a miracle of, when I say creation, I don't mean it in a sense of religion necessarily, but like, just think about like dark matter, for example. That's kind of where we went in that conversation with that kid that I had in class. Like I heard this thing the other day. It was on the Joe Rogan podcast, actually. He was saying that there's some guys who speculate that, these galaxies, like the one that we're in, the Milky Way that spins, they think that there's they hypothesize that there might be massive black holes in the center of them. And that's why they spin like water going down a drain,
Okay.
And that down these black holes, it's like a fractal pattern. You know what I'm talking about? Those infinite fractal patterns that go on infinitely into other, like, I guess, as I understand it, would be like the multiverse, kind of like what you were saying, like parallel universes. Like, I mean, just this, how incredible is that? How amazing is that? I don't want to create a group of kids that I never get them to think about these things that inspire them. And I'm just training them to be consumers and just to fill this next job for this consumer economy. I mean, how soulless is that? Or like how inhuman, how unhuman is that? Let's say it in that way. Like, man, like,
well, I think it's, I think it's our job now. And that's where I had mentioned that book, Most Likely to Succeed. So I finished that this week. And it's like we're doing such a bad job, collectively, and United States kind of in particular when it comes to preparing the kids to deal with, the present, because our model is just old. It's an old model, and it's teaching them old skills that don't necessarily matter anymore. And so it just seems like we need the race to, our species to elevate, and if we're going to solve all this stuff, and we're going to, kind of go down that road to try and solve these big problems that we have, like we need to be sure that we're giving every child those skills, and that want, and that curiosity, is the kind of the habits of mind, and all of that stuff that we that are kind of coming out. And it's like, how do we make sure that every child gets that? And I know we just, you start where you can, and then that's one thing as educators. You always hear people complain, oh, I wish the school was like this, or, oh, we should be doing that. And the question I always have is like, what's stopping you? You are in control of your classroom. I mean, yeah, maybe if you work in the public school system, it might be trickier, but if you work internationally, I mean, there's the school I work at. I mean, I can, there's a framework I have to stay within, but I can basically do what I want. So like I can read something and think about it and then try it and see what happens and kind of do my iterations and figure things out. So that's always kind of confused me about teachers or people that I listen to when they're kind of complaining about, how we should change things. And it's just like, well, start with you, just do things, see what happens.
I mean, I take this job. I can't say that I don't lose sight of this sometimes, but like hearing you say that, and I want to say this to myself, remind myself, like, because this is how I started. And I remember thinking, because I was pretty good, like kids loved me immediately as a teacher, on the high school level, that is. And I was surrounded by a lot of negative teachers. I mean, there were some good ones too, don't get me wrong, but and I remember thinking, when I become like that, I don't want to teach anymore. But with that being said, and this is what I wanted to say, like, I take this job so seriously. That doesn't mean that I'm at home every night planning the best lesson ever. What it does mean is that I know that every day there's 100 kids walking through my presence, and I can either make a positive impact on them or a negative impact on them. And I can, if I'm half-assed in what I do, I mean, not only they're not going to learn the particular skill or knowledge, but I'm also modeling how to be a half-assed person.
Yep.
I mean, how could you not take that seriously? You're affecting, because especially like grade 5, and then, it starts to change a bit in middle school and all, but you are their role models. They admire you. They are there to impress you. I mean, how could you not take that so seriously? Like, do you realize the impact, good or bad, that you can have on a person's life with the perceived power that they give you? Like, that's important, man. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the those things I'm trying to kind of overcome and change about myself is like, I'm trying to break down that perceived power. I kind of want, one of the statements I had read that really stuck with me is like, if you don't allow someone to say no, like their yes means nothing, and so that,
what do you mean? I don't understand that.
If I just tell you to do, like if in a school setting, I want the kids to want to sit and learn. I don't want them to come to a lesson because they have to, or because I've told them. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like but like, where do you draw the line, and kind of what's so that's kind of my internal kind of struggle and process is like, it should be okay if a kid says, I'm not interested in this. I don't want to do this right now. And then it's kind of it's my job then to do everything I can to make them see the importance of it, and to kind of partner with them and work with them as equals, letting them know that I learn from them, they learn from me, kind of thing. So that's, I lose sight of that at times. Don't get me wrong. I have not reached the level of teaching that I want to, for sure. But that's kind of been my thought is how do I make sure kids are bought in and want, and a real quick kind of example of that is not from my class, but I had read this book about most of the smartest kids in the world. That was the name of it. And it was about foreign exchange students from the United States going to different high performing countries. So like Finland, South Korea, and I think Poland, because Poland is kind of an up and coming education country. But the thing that the girl found in Finland is, she said the same groups are there. You know, you got your stoners, you got your stoners, you got kids, the popular kids, you got kids that are, on the fringes. And she said the difference between the school she was at in Finland and the school she was at in the States is that every single kid was bought in. Every one of them knew that what they were going through was making them a better person, and that it was important. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I'm trying to get there, and it's like, it's thinking that you could start off day one with kids bought in, just what you could do, as a group, or as a, I don't know, to dream a dream.
Yeah. That's interesting, because you were saying before that some kids have had like major damage done to them mm-hmm. from their experience with teachers before they ever get to you. So I mean, that will affect the level to which they're bought in to.
Yes, yeah, of course.
To where they're doing it. And something that stood out to me that with it's Finland, right? Like mm-hmm. when Michael Moore was doing his interview with some of those teachers there, like regardless of what subject they taught, they kind of identified their main goal was to create happy people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, and you mentioned South Korea, correct? Because the kids here are crazy. I mean, it's incredible. You could not, I mean, if you were like looking for a populace where you could be like, hey, do this, and they do it 10 times more than you ever wanted them to do, you would not find a more, like, you couldn't find a group of kids that match that more. However, we're talking about a country that is number 1 or number 2 in the world in alcohol consumption. Mm-hmm. And at least the last time I checked, it was meaning, in other words, this might not be right, but if it's not number 1, it's top 3, highest suicide rate in the world. And I think it was number 1 teen suicide rate in the world. Which is a reflection of the society, I think. Like, mm-hmm. do you know anything about how with their education system here?
Yeah, in the book, I mean, they've done it's like an incredible feat they've done, because where they started, I think in the late 70s, early 80s, their economy was basically that of present day Iraq, or Afghanistan. Right. Like that was what their economy was. And now they're, because of what they did in their education system, if you just look at it a purely, the ends justify the means kind of thing, mm-hmm. When it comes to the economy, I mean, they're one of, it's incredible how far they've come. And mm-hmm. what they did was they tried to make it as equal as possible. So like, no matter who you are, where you go to college is based on a test they take their senior year. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's it. Like, how you do on that test determines where you go to college. And so they thought that was a good idea, and they wanted to make things fair. And I mean, that has caused some really, a lot of money spent on what are the after school programs? It's not Hogwarts. Yeah, I was like Hogwarts. Yeah, Hogwarts. So there's a lot of money being spent on that. There's a lot of tired kids. I heard that they have an arm pillow, at least in some of the schools, where they have this kind of pillow thing on their head, on their arm, so that they can sleep during the school day, so that they can study then at night, kind of thing, which is very perverse if you think about it. Yeah. And then the teachers have a little wand that they use to kind of gently tap their heads to wake them up. Mm-hmm. And then when they take the test, like the whole country shuts down. Like, it's a very national thing, because you have to listen to English at some point, and so they even ground the planes. So there's like no planes flying at that time. So everything's very serious, and everything is taken seriously. Mm-hmm. And the thing they said in the book was, it wasn't so much the early teen suicide, like high school, it's after they take the test and they're not getting into one of the top 3 universities. Because if you don't go to one of the top 3, then you are plateaued. You have a ceiling that you can't get past when it comes to the workforce. And so it's more so I haven't looked into the statistics at all, just from what the book was saying, it was more like early adults suicide because they see that they're not going to advance like they want to, and that they're stuck. And so, and I know the current, well, I shouldn't say current, whoever was minister of education at the time that book was being written is like, they're aware of the problems, and they're trying to figure out ways to kind of help with that and kind of change the system. They're just not sure where to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think people work the same way that the kids study. I don't think that ever that's my thing, because like my kids are in grade 8 and they take it so seriously, like which is good. I mean, that's admirable in many ways, isn't it? But life is about balance. I mean, when I was in the States, man, first off, I said this before, like I'm not really a teacher that gives homework because I'm just not into homework philosophically. Like when I was a kid in high school, I just didn't do homework, and I still passed my classes, and I would have passed with higher averages had I not gotten zeros for the work I didn't do at home. I just never was into it, you know? Yeah. And on a side note too, as a teacher, and again, it depends on the subject. I'm not a math teacher or something like that. So if I'm doing things the right way, they are going to inevitably think about the things we're talking about in class. I don't have to assign you something to do. You're just going to start to think about it. But with that being said, if I gave homework in South Carolina, man, what are you doing? You might get 2 or 3 kids out of a class who are going to bring it, you know? And I can't remember where I was going with that, but you know, I guess I was trying to make the point that these kids are so driven. That's admirable, because I also think that in the U.S. we're out of balance in the opposite way. Like we just take for granted everything that, or at least that education system. I'll say that. But with that being said, with considering that Korea has so much alcohol consumption, which I maybe incorrectly associate with unhappiness, because I mean, alcohol is a drug that makes you numb to reality. It doesn't enhance it. It numbs it out. You know what I'm saying? And then the suicide rate as well. And I'm like, you're in grade 8. If you're this stressed out already, when's it going to get better?
Yeah.
Like, I think we have to ask that question. I mean, what is the point of all this? Yeah, you got into this great college. Now what? You're going to get a nice car and like the best clothes? Like, what is the end of all this? What are you really trying to, like, that's peel back the onion layers of your own psyche. What are you trying to do and why are you trying to do it? Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. No, because like everything that I've seen and looked at, it's if you're on, I can never remember the treadmill. Maybe when your life is about things, like you're making money to buy stuff, and then that stuff gets old, so you buy new stuff, and like if you get your happiness through that, and that's what you put value on, that you're never going to be happy and you're never going to be satisfied, and you're never, you're just on this treadmill that is never ending. But where happiness is, it's like it's working with people, it's collaborating, it's helping out people who have not had the same opportunities that you've had and that are struggling with life, and trying to give service to them and helping them and just experiencing things. It's putting yourself into experiences that kind of last with you, and being around people. So it's really is. Like, I understand that government made a conscious decision to be better. Like they and this was the direction they took. But like, if you look at like Finland, it's like they want like you said, they want their kids, they want the people to be happy, and they want them to do something important, and they want them to be self-aware and self-actualized, and like it's okay if you don't want to make a bunch of money. It's that's not what everything's about. It's about like the happiness, and because I going back to something you said earlier, like if you ever became angry and bitter, you would want to stop teaching. And I always think like teaching, if you are upset, like, and you're not a happy person, like teaching is the worst job in the world. Like there's no way that you should be a teacher. Because A, it's hard. It's one of the hardest jobs. There's something, we make 900 to 1,000 decisions a day. Right? That's what I've seen that stat somewhere. So just the mental process and the mental effort that you have to put in is horribly demanding. And then you're just affected more, but more importantly, you're having such a negative effect on these little precious beings that, have no choice to be in your classroom. They're not choosing to be there. So I don't know. But let me ask you this: where did the class go when that student brought that up? Like, what happened after that? When he said there's no purpose and.
Well, I wanted him to follow that thought. And so I asked, well, what do you guys think? What do you think about that? Because I knew my impulse was, I don't think that, and I want to tell you this, but I wanted to see, I wanted to see where it would go. But I think the most important decision I made in that split second moment, I never thought about making like 900,000 decisions a day, is I don't want to sweep this under the rug, because I was about to. I was about to be like, oh no, there's a lot to be happy about. Okay, there's this thing, and then like change the subject. So I wanted them to talk about that, and they did for a minute. And I don't remember I was already impacted. Like I was already having this internal dialogue with myself because I realized my knee-jerk reactions. So I mean, I was kind of guiding them through having that conversation with one another. But on another level, I was talking to myself, and I was thinking, man, why was I so afraid to go here, and why was I about to just ignore? Which is almost, you would have to see how the kid did it too. It was almost, I mean, this is bias, I guess, for me to say it this way, but it was almost like a cry for help a little bit, to be like, tell me that's not true. You know what I'm saying? Like, tell me that I'm wrong about this,
Yeah.
And then eventually
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go.
Well, eventually I just got to my own spiel about that we just get numb. At some point in life, we just forget, dude, things in the air mix together and it causes a chemical reaction, and boom, some stuff falls on the ground called snow, and you just get so numb to it. You just get stuck in your routine that you forget, this is incredible. Like you are alive in this thing, in this hologram or whatever it is, for a small amount of time. And it is so fascinating. And we just let that get beat out of us because we focus on the most narrow points of it. And it might be I don't know, maybe it's a result of materialism, because so many of our, I mean, most economies are capitalistic in the world, and it's very much driven by materialism, right? But that has deeper social consequences beyond just, I mean, in other words, there was a time in humanity when they focused on the non-material, they focused on that, and that had its negative effects as well. Like we keep swinging from one side to the other side. You know what I'm saying? So I got, from there, I went into that just talk of cosmology. Like, do you realize this? And, I don't know that this is true, but here's what they say. And this is just like incredibly, like, I just wanted the kid to be excited at least about, I don't know either, but hey, this is super cool. Like, look, I mean, this is incredible. Like, this is, at the very least, even if there is no purpose, it's incredible. You know what I'm saying? It's fascinating, and you're a part of it for a small amount of time.
Yeah. Well, that just sparks. There is some, I think, interesting research about the whole idea of awe, and like trying to give. Like, it was all based on astronauts who have been out into space and looked at Earth, and if you have that experience, it completely changes like your outlook and your thought process, because you see us as a whole. There's no division. There's everything's kind of connected, and you have this moment of complete and utter awe, and it changes you. And so it's this idea of kind of, I think what you're saying is like you're trying to give students moments of awe so that they do see kind of the beauty and change the way of their outlooks and kind of self-actualize. Possibly.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, also, even on a more superficial level, have you ever had a job you hated?
For short times, yeah. I
Yeah,
usually
me
get out of
too.
those quick, yeah.
But how many people do that forever?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
What are you doing? Like, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Like, it's so hard to snap out of it. It's like, you're going to die one day. You weren't
Yeah.
put here to go to this thing and pull this lever 1,000 times. I had like a factory job for a summer, and
Mm-hmm.
it was the most maddening thing ever. But there were people who did it as a career. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
was their thing. Like,
Yeah. Well,
God,
some of that is sacrifice, right? They're trying to make a better life for their kids, you know.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. And I was
but
a
I
kid.
think that, yeah. But I was saying, I think that time is coming to an end, you know. I think that
Mhm.
used to be how you had to do things. But I think the one thing about our present is that I don't think we're going to have to do that, you know. At least I hope not. And yeah, I hope there is a fundamental shift coming when it comes to higher education and what it means to be, or education in general, and what it means
Mm.
to be someone qualified to work. Because I think I'm gonna. I do have to go to my thing, but I'm gonna end my thinking on this thought, and then you can have your go with it. But there was an anecdote in the book that I was reading. It was this company was hiring, I don't know, some sort of manager or salesman or something, and they were looking at this resume, and the resume is like, amazing. This guy had, put together all these big deals. Everyone had glowing records of him, and just really an outstanding person that you would want in your organization. And then this company was about to hire this person and saw his SAT scores, and they were not what they were hoping they would be, and so they didn't hire him. And it's just like, how can you be so short-sighted that matters, that SAT scores matter? Like, it's just so bizarre to me that you would say, oh yeah, no, we see this life experience you have and all the things you've done, but this test you took 20 years ago, that we're out of this. Sorry, we're not gonna work with you. And so it's how do we get out of that mentality as a society? And
Wow. And how blessed, if I can use that word, how blessed was that guy that he didn't take that job with those?
right, exactly.
I mean, maybe I've got like this is probably some type of like mental defense of mine, I'm sure. But like when I was applying to jobs to other schools, I was like, man, if these people don't want me, I'm lucky that I feel like my, whatever, like I'm confident that I'm good at what I do. And if I don't have this particular, because like getting into IB specifically, dude, if you don't have experience, they don't want anything to do with you. It's incredible. It's such like a SAT type thing. I mean, with some validity. I mean, there's a certain amount of knowledge that comes with that. That they don't want to take the time to train someone in that. But I mean, knowing the IB or that particular curriculum does not make you a good teacher. You got to be a good teacher. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But I think, and that's a common theme, through everything. That's why it's not like technology doesn't fix anything. You have to be a good teacher. Nothing fixes anything. It's you as the professional that needs to fix stuff for yourself, kind of thing. And on that note, I think I will bid you an adieu.
It's always nice to see the day awaken behind you. I know you can't see it.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Yeah.
But I'm seeing it behind
I see
you.
it when I wake up. And we're waking up as you're going to bed. So
yeah, man.
We'll have a good one. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, man, for sure. I'll be in touch with you.
Yeah. All right. Bye. Oh, I'm going to stop something real quick, but let me talk. I have a